you've ever worried about what art style you should use for your comic, then by the end of this video, you'll not only know the answer to that concern, but you'll draw your comic with confidence. So, what is the best art style for a comic? Is it manga? Is it the Marvel way? Is it like Rachel Smythe or Dave McKean? Well, it's all of them, and none of them. In fact, I will go as far as to say that those art styles are actively bad for your comic. Because there is no such thing as the best art style, but there is such a thing as the best art style for your comic. So, how do you find it? Well, it's actually really simple, and it only requires 3 foundations. Foundation 1, plan. Before you settle on an art style, you need to plan it. And you can do that by first figuring out how much time you're willing to spend on your comic. This will impact your choice, because if you can only afford to spend a couple of hours a week on your comic, then you shouldn't choose an art style that's going to take you hours and hours and hours per panel and per page, because you'll never finish your comic. The second thing you need to do is figure out where your current skill ceiling is. If every panel that you draw is really difficult because you're not used to a particular technique or way of drawing, then not only will that add to your time constraints, but it will make every single panel more stressful and less fun to draw. So first and foremost, pick an art style that you can pull off consistently. Now, before you settle on an art style, you need to understand the 3 biggest reasons why you find finding an art style so difficult. And they are because ego, insecurity, and naivety. The first 2 reasons come from the same place. You're worried that someone will call out your comic for being too simple or amateurish, so you overcompensate by over-rendering every panel so that they look like a fully formed illustration. But this will backfire because all you're going to do is put unnecessary pressure on yourself. And the people who choose to be negative about your comic are going to find something else to be negative about your comic anyway. So ignore the noise and pick a style that is sustainable for you. Which brings me on to this one. If you're relatively new to comics, then there's something that you need to be aware of before you get stuck. Comics are hard. And one of the main reasons they're so hard is because they take a very, very long time to complete. If you go into a comic project where your average page takes like 2 weeks to complete, then you are not going to finish that comic project. So put your ego and insecurity to one side and pick an art style that you can do consistently. Which brings me on to foundation 2. Right, the next thing to do is to look for some examples of simplified styles. Mike Mignola, the Scott Pilgrim books, even One Punch Man are all examples of simple, or in One Punch Man's case, actively bad art styles. And yet they work because comics are not about flashy art styles. Comics are about storytelling, and good storytelling doesn't require flashy art styles. I'll show you 2 more examples. First example, this. This is Mouse, and it's one of the most critically acclaimed comics of all time. And it's not because of the flashy art style, although the art style is very nice. It's because of the storytelling and the subject matter, and there is a reason why I am not showing you the cover, because I don't want to. So that's the back cover. Very nice. Second example, Persepolis. And that's the art style. Again, critically acclaimed, very successful, and it's even a motion picture. So you do not need to over-render your panels in order to make a successful comic. But the question is, how do you know whether your art style is flashy or not? The examples I've given, particularly those 2, were no color, very basic shapes. So does that mean that anything beyond that is flashy? No. But if you're not exactly sure of how flashy your art style is, or how flashy to make your art style, and just so that we're clear, by flashy, I basically mean like over-rendered. Like flashy art is art that takes a little bit longer to do because you're adding in more details or more layers on top of layers. So particularly if you're an illustrator, because a lot of illustrators will start art as illustrators and then they'll transition into comics, is take whatever your style is that you think is the most like impressive version of your style, and then reduce its simplicity by 50%. Or should that be increase? Increase simplicity? Yeah, increase simplicity by 50%. You want it to be more simple, not less. And then once you've done that, you don't have to do this exact, by the way, but just to give you an idea. Once you've done that, then do a test page and see how long that takes you. And then if that takes you a long time, or you find it really difficult to do, or you find that it's really taxing to do, then increase the simplicity up again by like 25% and then do another test page. What you're looking for is how long it takes you to do it, plus how enjoyable it is to draw. If you can minimize the first one and maximize the second one, then that is the perfect art style for you. Because not only will you complete your comic in a good amount of time, but you'll actually enjoy the process. So foundations 1 and 2 are about finding an art style right now. It factors in your time constraints and your current skill set. Whatever you choose, make sure that it respects your time and energy levels, and it's something that you can consistently pull off. Remember that you're drawing panels over and over and over again. Hundreds, and in some cases, thousands of panels can make up a single comic. So choose wisely. But you don't necessarily want your art style to be fixed. How do you evolve and improve your art style? Well, that leads us on to the third foundation. So let's take an artist's work. Let's use Loish as an example because she's a very popular artist, and for good reason, because she's amazing. But take whatever artist that you really admire, but pick one for now. When you have your chosen artist, write down 2 or 3 things that you really like about their style. So for our example, you might write that you love the way that she draws hair, or you like the shapes she uses for the noses of her characters, or her use of contrasting colors in her palettes. Whatever they are, write them down. Now take one of those things that you've written down and choose one area of your comic that you're going to apply it to. So if you want to draw noses like the way Loish does, then commit to drawing noses like that, but only for your main character. If you like the way that she draws hair, then again, choose one character, the main character or another one, and apply it just to them. And again, if you like her color palettes, then choose one character, or perhaps just choose the backgrounds and apply it to that. What we're doing here is we're adding to our skill set and being inspired and influenced by the people that we look up to without overwhelming ourselves too much. If you decide that you want to update your art style or choose a completely new art style and you apply it for your entire comic, then it's going to feel like a lot, and it could actually impact your storytelling abilities and make the comic worse. And the reason for that is not because you're not necessarily as good as the artists that inspire you, and so you're creating a lesser quality work than them, but because you're focused so much on the art style that you're not focusing on the storytelling. Because ultimately that's what comics are about, and that's what separates a good comic from a bad comic, is how well it tells a story in using sequential art. That's it. So pick 1 or 2 things to commit to and 1 or 2 areas of your comic to apply those things to. Once those things start to become natural and you're not having to overthink every time you draw the nose or the hair or whatever it is that you've decided, then add something else on top of that. It doesn't have to all be from the same artist, and ideally you want to spread yourself out as much as possible, because if you take inspiration from just one artist, you're going to look a lot like that artist, and you don't necessarily want to be a carbon copy of somebody else. But maybe you do, although I wouldn't advise it. Think of this process like going on a diet. If you cut everything out and change everything about what you eat, then your diet is not going to last. But if you slowly transition into eating more healthy stuff and less unhealthy stuff, it won't feel as difficult, and you're much more likely to guarantee results that actually last. Speaking of food, before I tell you how you can have your cake and eat it too, where you're able to have a sustainable style and a flashy style within the same comic, I want to tell you about something that I'm working on. Doing these videos on YouTube is really satisfying, because these are the kinds of videos that I really needed 10 years ago, and mentoring comic creators is something that I've come to love doing. I was doing free one-to-ones via my Discord, but that became unsustainable. So in early 2026, I'm launching a group mentorship program, which is based on my P.A.N.E.L framework. P.A.N.E.L like comics, right? Clever. It's an 8-week program, and we'll go through each stage from planning, which includes picking a style, as we've talked about in this video, to assemble, where we set up your workflow and reference tools. Then we move on to navigate, where we try and avoid potential roadblocks before we get to them. Then we execute, which is all about building momentum, setting goals and accountability. And finally, longevity, where we discuss anti-burnout practices and time management systems to keep you going in the long term. The beta will launch in February 2026. If you're a member of my Patreon, you will get first dibs, But the second best place to find out is via email. So if you're interested, either join my Patreon or sign up for free in the description of the video. I'm really looking forward to starting it, and I hope to see you guys there. Right, that's enough promo. Let's talk about cake. I acknowledge that we all have egos. As much as we might hate to admit it, we all have one. And as artists, we do have a tendency to want to show off a bit, or at least to show others what the best work we're capable of doing is. And it can feel that we're kind of holding ourselves back a bit by simplifying our work. But don't worry, there is a way that we can simplify our art style in order to be more practical with our comic progress and show the world how awesome we are at the same time. For the comic story, keep the style simple. That doesn't change from what we've already discussed. But for the cover, for the marketing, for the chapter headings and inside pages, that's when you can let your artistic skills off the leash. Show the world how awesome you are as an artist through those areas, not through the comic story itself. Not only will you get to flex your artistic muscles and show off, as we all ultimately want to do, but you'll actually be able to complete your comic because it won't take you 100 years because you have to render every blade of grass in order to show people that you know how to draw grass. Because that's the key when it comes to creating comics. It's about balancing your time, energy, and ambition. And if your art style enables all three of those things, then that is the best art style for you. But balance is one of the most difficult things to reconcile as an artist, and most of us struggle to find time to fit comics into our busy lives. And if that sounds like you, then watch this video next, because I'll show you the exact system that I've used and plan to use that will actually give you extra days of the week.